Adrian Kwan and Mia Fernandez had the perfect $3 million wedding, but within 72 hours, one of them would be dead, and the other would be exposed as the mastermind behind one of Singapore's most shocking crimes. Singapore's elite arrived at Marina Bay Sands dressed in designer suits and sparkling gowns, gathering for what many called the most extravagant wedding the country had ever seen. The floating deck had been transformed into a shimmering paradise lined with gold, trimmed arches, crystal chandeliers, and imported orchids arranged in perfect symmetry. Everything about the event looked unreal, as if the evening itself had been built for cameras and headlines. Adrian Kwan, the groom, had a reputation for perfection. His business empire spanned biotechnology, real estate, and luxury tech investments. People often whispered that he never made a decision without calculating every detail. Yet on his wedding day, he appeared strangely distant. His smile was tight, his brows drawn in concentration rather than joy. Even so, he moved with controlled precision, greeting dignitaries, investors, and celebrities who had flown in from around the world to witness the union. His bride, Mia Fernandez, arrived like a contrast to his rigid presence. She stepped onto the deck in a delicate lace gown that caught the golden lights, making her appear almost weightless. Her history was nothing like Adrian's. Born to a modest family and known for her humanitarian work, she spent her 20s helping communities in Southeast Asia. Her gentle nature and unexpected pairing with a billionaire fascinated the public. Many believed their relationship was a symbol of hope, a bridge between two very different worlds. Mia carried herself with quiet confidence, unaware that her own story had become a subject of curiosity and speculation. The ceremony unfolded under the soft glow of sunset. As the guests watched, drones captured cinematic shots for the couple's private wedding film. A European orchestra played a carefully selected arrangement, while a team coordinated the timing of the fireworks that would erupt moments after the vows. Behind the scenes, event planners moved with urgent precision, ensuring that the $3 million celebration appeared effortless. Guests whispered about the luxury, but some noticed something unusual about Adrian. He stepped away several times, checking his phone as if waiting for an update. His expression tightened each time he read a message, but he quickly masked it with a polite nod or a forced smile when returning to the crowd. Mia remained blissfully unaware of his growing unease. She spent the evening thanking guests, laughing softly, and touching the floral arrangements she had chosen herself. Family friends later recalled how she radiated genuine happiness, believing she had entered a new chapter full of promise. Her sincerity only made the unfolding tragedy more haunting. During the reception, Adrian's closest employees noticed his hands shaking slightly when he lifted his champagne glass. The man known for emotional discipline appeared momentarily fragile. Yet he continued moving through the evening like a machine programmed to maintain his image. As night fell, a breathtaking fireworks display painted the sky above the Marina Bay waterfront. The crowd cheered, unaware that beneath the spectacle, something dark was beginning to take shape. Hidden behind Adrian's controlled exterior was a seed of suspicion, planted long before the vows but awakened that very night by a message he refused to share with anyone. Within 72 hours, the fairytale celebration would become the center of one of Singapore's most chilling investigations. Adrian returned from the wedding weekend carrying an unease that refused to settle. The celebrations had ended, the luxury had faded into silence, and the penthouse, usually his sanctuary, felt strangely suffocating. He moved through the rooms with restless energy, unable to appreciate the sweeping view of the Singapore River or the soft glow of the city below. His phone remained in his hand, screen lighting up every few minutes as he reviewed the same set of files over and over. These files were part of a standard background check he ordered for anyone who entered his personal or professional life. It was a habit rooted in his obsession with control, something he believed protected him from betrayal. He had requested Mia's report months earlier, but one section had arrived incomplete due to an overseas data discrepancy. The missing piece appeared only after the wedding, and it changed everything in his mind. The flagged medical entry from a Bangkok clinic stood out like a warning sign. It suggested that Mia had once tested HIV positive during a volunteer assignment. The document was vague and lacked confirmations, but Adrian did not wait for clarifications. His thoughts spiraled toward the worst interpretation possible. He convinced himself it wasn't an error or misunderstanding, but a deliberate secret she had hidden from him. Instead of speaking to her, he locked himself inside his private study and began cross-checking every detail of her past. His concentration deepened into obsession, the room filled with papers, printouts, and scribbled notes as he replayed the same possibilities in his mind. Mia moved quietly through the penthouse during those hours, unaware of the storm building behind the closed door. She noticed his distance, but assumed it was work, related, something she had already learned to expect from a man who built his entire empire on relentless focus. She made tea for him, left it outside the study, and spent the rest of the evening reading messages from friends congratulating her on the wedding. To her, the days after the ceremony felt like the beginning of something beautiful. To Adrian, they felt like a trap closing around him. By the second day, he had hired private investigators to retrieve every medical record linked to Mia, regardless of location or privacy laws. His employees followed his orders with unease. They had never seen him like this tense, paranoid, and unable to think rationally. He barely slept, spending the nights connecting timelines, creating theories that lacked evidence but satisfied his rising fear. He checked the wedding footage repeatedly, pausing on Mia's expressions, interpreting her smiles as signs of dishonesty rather than joy. He believed he had been deceived, not only emotionally but socially. In his world, reputation was currency, and secrets were threats. His fixation grew with each passing hour, tightening around him like a vise. He imagined scenarios where she had trapped him intentionally, where her gentle nature was merely an act meant to secure a future within his wealth and influence. The thought poisoned him deeply, pushing him toward decisions he would never have considered before. By the end of the day, Adrian no longer sought truth. He sought justification. Instead of waiting for the investigators to verify the Bangkok record, he convinced himself he already knew the answer. His certainty became dangerous. As he stood alone in the dim study, surrounded by papers and shadows, Adrian decided that the woman he married had betrayed him. And once he believed that, there was no turning back from the darkness waiting ahead. The third night after the wedding unfolded with a heaviness that settled over Adrian's private island villa like an unseen fog. The property, perched near Sentosa's coastline, was designed as a retreat for peace and privacy, but it now felt more like a stage prepared for something grim. Staff moved quietly, aware that Adrian had spent most of the day locked inside his study. They exchanged uneasy looks whenever they crossed paths, noticing the shifting atmosphere, but unable to explain it. Adrian's routines, once precise and predictable, had become erratic. He refused his meals, ignored scheduled calls, and remained buried in the documents that had consumed him since the night of the wedding. As night deepened, cameras captured Adrian pacing through the villa corridors with a rigid, mechanical stride. He entered the medical wing, a section of the estate he rarely visited. Inside were secured cabinets containing supplies he kept for emergencies. Footage later revealed him unlocking one of these cabinets, retrieving a small metal case, and pausing for several minutes as if battling with his own thoughts. The lighting cast long shadows across the room, highlighting his tense posture. He clutched the case tightly, almost as if afraid it would slip from his grasp. Meanwhile, Mia moved through the villa with quiet contentment, unaware of the storm building around her. She had spent the day organizing their belongings, sending thank-you notes to friends, and admiring the filled notebooks she used to document her volunteer work. The calmness of the ocean outside soothed her, and the gentle rhythm of the waves echoed her belief that life was finally settling into something stable and beautiful. She noticed Adrian's distance, but attributed it to stress from work. In her mind, the wedding had introduced a new beginning, not the unraveling that Adrian believed he saw. Around midnight, motion sensors on the villa grounds recorded activity in the garden walkway, a long stone path leading toward the cliffside edge overlooking the water. The footage showed Adrian walking with firm, determined steps. Moments later, Mia joined him, moving with her usual gentle pace. Their silhouettes merged into the shadows as they walked together toward the point where the garden met the steep drop to the sea. The cameras facing that direction recorded nothing more. They had been manually disabled earlier that night for exactly 1 hour. At 3 a.m., Adrian returned alone. His clothes were damp, clinging heavily to his frame. His wedding band was missing, and his hair was plastered back with water. He walked into the villa silently, ignoring the staff who watched him from a distance, shocked by his appearance. Without a single word, he instructed them not to disturb him and returned to his room, shutting the door behind him with a slow, deliberate motion. As dawn broke, a housekeeper noticed dark stains along the stone path leading toward the cliff. The stains stretched across several steps, forming a faint, uneven trail. When she leaned closer, a chill ran through her. This was not water from the ocean. It was blood, diluted but unmistakable. Panic rippled through the staff, and within minutes, calls were made to security and then to the authorities. The villa, once a place of opulence and tranquility, transformed into a scene of suspicion. Mia was nowhere to be found. Adrian remained locked away in his room, and the staff, uncertain and terrified, waited for the arrival of the police. The clock marked the 72nd hour since the wedding, and the fairy tale had shattered completely. The darkness Adrian had carried inside him had finally stepped into the real world, leaving behind a trail that could no longer be ignored. Police arrived at the island villa just after sunrise, turning the quiet coastal property into a controlled investigation zone. Officers moved carefully along the stone path, where diluted streaks of blood suggested that something violent had occurred during the night. The staff huddled near the entrance, shaken and confused, whispering their recollections of the early morning hours. None of them had seen Mia, none of them had heard the sound of a struggle. The only unusual moment they reported was Adrian's return at 3 a.m., soaked, silent, and colder than they had ever seen him. His refusal to answer questions only deepened the officers' suspicions. Adrian claimed that Mia had gone for a walk and never returned. His flat tone and lack of urgency unsettled the lead investigator, who watched him closely while taking notes. The villa was too secure, too monitored, and too secluded for someone to simply disappear without leaving a trace. A search of the premises began immediately. Officers examined every room, every hallway, and every corner of the garden. When they reached the cliffside, the waves below crashed violently against the rocks, as though trying to erase whatever had happened there. Pieces of ornamental plants were scattered near the edge, and a faint indentation in the grass suggested that someone had knelt or fallen there recently. Divers were called in to search the waters while forensic teams followed the blood trail. It led to a drainage pipe near the garden where reddish residue had pooled. Samples confirmed it belonged to Mia. The discovery shifted the investigation from a missing person case to a likely homicide. Meanwhile, another team examined her personal belongings. They found her phone locked inside a drawer in the villa, but the drawer's handle bore only Adrian's fingerprints. The absence of hers cast doubt on his claim that she had left voluntarily. Surveillance footage became the turning point. When investigators reviewed the video logs, they noticed a suspicious gap. 1 hour of footage was missing from the camera that faced the garden and cliffside. The system had not malfunctioned. Someone had manually disabled it. After cross-checking access logs within the security system, it became clear that the cameras had been turned off using Adrian's personal authorization code. Confronted with this information, Adrian maintained that it was an error, but his explanation was inconsistent and lacked any technical basis. Further evidence emerged from his study. Hidden beneath stacks of documents were printed medical records, handwritten notes, and travel receipts. The Bangkok clinic report lay among them, half crumpled and smudged from frequent handling. Next to it was a set of cancelled honeymoon bookings, made only hours after the wedding ceremony. This detail revealed something investigators hadn't expected. Adrian had been disturbed long before Mia disappeared. He had been planning something, or at least anticipating it, far earlier than he admitted. The investigators pieced together the sequence of events: Adrian's growing paranoia, the surveillance gap, the blood trail, the locked phone, and the missing bride. Every clue pointed toward premeditation rather than accident. As the search expanded to nearby islands and coastal waters, public interest surged. News outlets reported the disappearance with dramatic headlines, and social media erupted with theories and speculation. Adrian's stoic demeanor only fueled suspicion. He appeared more concerned about preserving his reputation than showing concern for his missing wife. By evening, the case had escalated into a national sensation. The villa remained sealed, officers continued combing the coastline, and divers prepared for another a morning sweep of the waters. The investigators knew they were close to uncovering the truth. They could feel it woven into every detail: the silence of the villa, the missing footage, the blood near the cliff. Something terrible had happened on that island, and the man who claimed to know nothing might have been the only one who knew everything. On the 7th day of the search, divers entered the waters surrounding the island before dawn, moving slowly along the breakwater where currents often trapped debris. The early light filtered through the surface, illuminating fragments of seaweed and scattered stones. Then one diver spotted something lodged between the rocks, weighted down by what appeared to be pieces of metal. When he signaled to the others and the body was lifted to the surface, the tension that had gripped the investigation finally broke. The remains were transported quietly to the mainland, where forensic experts confirmed through dental records that the victim was Mia. The discovery transformed the final threads of hope into a heartbreaking conclusion. The autopsy revealed a disturbing truth. Mia had not struggled, nor had she suffered injuries consistent with a fall from the cliff. Instead, a fast-acting sedative had been injected into her system shortly before her death. The injection left only a tiny mark, almost invisible, but clear enough for the forensic team. The sedative had slowed her breathing and rendered her unconscious, making her unable to resist or call for help. Weighted objects found tied near her lower body indicated an intentional effort to keep her submerged. The evidence made it undeniable that her death had been planned and executed methodically. While this was unfolding, investigators received the final verification from the Bangkok clinic. The flagged HIV entry that had triggered Adrian's spiral was a false positive recorded years earlier. The clinic's documents included a follow-up test that clearly stated Mia was not HIV positive. Those records had been available but never reached the investigator who sent the initial report. Had Adrian waited even a single day for the full file, he would have known the truth. Instead, he had allowed his fears, pride, and obsession with control to dictate every action. This revelation stunned the investigative team. Their notes reflected a quiet disbelief. The motive for the crime was built entirely on misunderstanding. Authorities confronted Adrian with the evidence late in the afternoon. He remained composed, almost detached, as though refusing to acknowledge the reality closing in around him. His calmness shattered hours later when he attempted to escape. Surveillance teams monitoring the villa saw him moving quickly toward the private marina at the dock, carrying 2 suitcases. A yacht captain later admitted Adrian had ordered an unscheduled departure, offering a large sum for silence. Before the yacht could untie from the dock, police intercepted him. The suitcases he carried contained cash, encrypted hard drives, and a passport registered under one of his offshore companies. The arrest sent shockwaves through Singapore. The billionaire who had been admired for his discipline and innovation was exposed as the architect of a senseless tragedy. Public reaction was immediate. Media outlets released timelines, forensic findings, and expert commentary. Many struggled to understand how a man with such power and intelligence could destroy his new marriage and a life without verifying the information that sparked his fear. The trial that followed drew massive attention. Forensic evidence, digital logs, the missing camera footage, and the medical documents formed a narrative too strong to dispute. Prosecutors argued that Adrian had been driven not by rage alone, but by a deep fixation on protecting his reputation. The court heard details of his background checks, his erratic behavior in the days after the wedding, and his calculated steps leading to the murder. The defense attempted to portray him as a man overwhelmed by shock, but the evidence made the motive unmistakable. As the verdict was read, the courtroom atmosphere was heavy. Adrian showed no visible reaction. He remained motionless, as though caught in the machinery of consequences he had built himself. Mia's family wept quietly, finally holding the truth that had been withheld from them for days. The case left the nation with an unsettling truth. A misunderstanding, magnified by pride and unchecked suspicion, had escalated into an irreversible tragedy. The story became a chilling reminder that fear, when left unchallenged, can twist even the most powerful minds into committing the unthinkable.